Hello folks, this is HexagonalSpy the Spy, and going to be coming to you on the next announcement. Command & Conquer 3 Tiberium Wars, the non-campaign series, is going to be having its videos to be posted soon this week, before the end of this week, so before I'll be able to get started on those videos, I'd rather be talking about some more about the summoning rules of Yu-Gi-Oh! So, let's start with it's just notifications on my phone from Discord asking me to be able to do Yu-Gi-Oh! But I'm going to be busy this week, so let's see which of the anime series we should talk about. We've already talked about Yu-Gi-Oh! Frames and Link Monsters from the last two announcements, so here it is. Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5. The fifth generation of Yu-Gi-Oh! AKA the generation where it shows up pendulum monsters. Now, I don't have an instruction manual for this type of thing, but I will give you laying out the details what I can at this point. In the Yu-Gi-Oh! Arc 5 series, after the fourth generation of Yu-Gi-Oh!, there's this entertainer duelist called Yu-Gi-Oh! Sakaki, and his dream is to be able to follow his father's footsteps of becoming a greatest duel-tainer in the history, and he just might be able to pull it off because now, in the anime of Arc 5, there's this new field of the virtual reality where action cards come into play. Now, it's kind of like something that it's kind of like the speed spells from 5Ds, but in this case, this is not going to be about speed spells, it's going to be about action cards. Now, action cards can be able to be about many things in that anime, about power up, about deal effect damage, or about defense, and about saving your monster by you taking the damage instead, and then invade damage, and there's a lot to go about with the action cards, but other than that, it's just a little bit more different scenarios. It just requires this field spell where there's action field. Is you could be able to move around where there's cards flowing around. You could be able to grab an action card. It's kind of like a game of luck. In fact, is that if you get action card, you could get really lucky to be able to help your monsters and yourself in the duel, but if you somehow get very unlucky, then you could accidentally to be damaging yourself of your life points or some dramatic event, but other than that, it's a game of chance of luck, so it's going to be kind of something you'll be able to understand more if you watch the Arc 5 series of the anime. But that's not really what I want to talk about. What I do want to talk about is that in this anime, in that generation, it's about a new summoning method. A method that Yu Sakaki was able to pull up where no one before him was able to do. a summoning called pendulums. Now, I don't have a card that represents. Actually, I may have that card. Okay, I'll be right back. Okay, this giant blue moon deck of mine, I have a pendulum card, several of them actually. I just need to be able to find it. Damn it. Well, it's not exactly in this deck, but, okay. You see a pendulum card that has these crystals of red and blue crystals, right, on two centers that's in the position like this of a card, and then if you see that those crystals are called. You gotta be freaking kidding me. Now's a good time. Okay, the pendulums are like scales of crystals that's on a card, and then there will be a number on a top of them, and if you see a pendulum that has those type of things, if you see a card that has those type of things on a card, that means they're pendulum monsters. Pendulum monsters are like monster cards, but they act as spell cards. On the old format, there's two squares that's next to the field square and the extra deck and the deck slot and the graveyard slot. Two squares that's next to those for specific things. And those squares are to be places for where you put your pendulum monsters and those type of scales. And then you'd be able to place those monster cards, those pendulum cards, into those place those slots. And then once you do, that's what you call a pendulum scale set. And how to be able to do this pendulum summon with those cards is that if you be able to have, remember that the numbers that of top of it, and that's above this crystal, so of the red and blue crystals that I just mentioned about, well, those are just about, let's say that there's a higher number in one of those pendulum monsters, and then there is a number that's in the smallest number. Now, if you be able to, now the number of those cards, you be able to use these pendulum monsters of those number scales to be able to summon as many monsters as possible from either from your hand or better yet from the extra deck where your pendulum monsters that has gone to the extra deck. But we'll get to that how that's even possible. But first, I need to pay attention real closely about what I'm trying to say, to listen real carefully, is that the numbers of the scales is determined, it's just about as how many monsters you can be able to special summon at once. It's the numbers are like just about as stars of monsters that you have. So if you'd be able to have scale 8 to one of your pendulum monsters in your pendulum slots, you'd be able to summon as below monsters of 7 to 1 at the same time. So you could be able like summon out level 1, level 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7, level 7 monsters from your hand or from your extra deck where pendulum monsters are. And then it's just really much more effective. Now the monsters pendulum scales has their own special abilities once per turn. They can either be able to be a power-up for your monsters on the field, or it could be something that does devastating effects on the opponent's back row of their dueling slots. So it's quite complicated to what I'm trying to explain with pendulum monsters because I'm still trying to work out the kinks of how to do pendulum summoning of my own, but it's quite actually fun to be able to use those cards. I actually have been quite got the hang of them, but how to be able to use the mastery of the scales of pendulum monsters is quite a challenge, believe me. So, with that being said, let's resume of what I was reading about. It's a never-before-seen technique that only Yuya Sakaki, before any others, was able to discover about this pendulum summoning. It'd be able to let him summon as many monsters at once, just like what I was just explaining to you about the pendulum scales of said monsters in your pendulum slots. But when countless rivals emerge to try to steal the spotlight, this Yuya needs to be able to gear up to get to his game because the dueling has evolved into a non-stop world of action. And it's quite frankly to be true, really. Okay. Like, in the anime, there's another second person that was able to discover this pendulum technique, and he is just about much more experienced with that pendulum technique than Yuya. His name is Declan Akaba. I think that's his last name. And he's a #1 rival to Yuya Sakaki because he's the second person and also has complete mastery of using pendulum scale monsters. But we'll get to that later about more rules of pendulum monsters and about how they work, of the rules, and about action cards in the anime. So this HexagonalSpy, the Spy, sign off, and we'll be right back after these messages for the next announcement.